Gamma radiation will not turn you into the Hulk, but it will turn you into a very dead body. The process that creates gamma rays can also be used to create electricity, but without creating greenhouse gases. Since these gases contribute to global warming, it is essential for us to find new and innovative technologies that reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that we make. Nuclear energy is a zero-emission source, and I will attempt to persuade you all to support it in the time I am allowed. So first of all, let's go over what is energy. Energy is simply the capacity for something to do work, and work is a force times a distance. So for example, imagine an old water wheel used in ancient societies. The river carrying energy flows past the wheel, which turns it, produces work. This work per unit time is power, and this is what electricity is. So what does a modern day power plant look like? Well, a modern day power plant runs off what's called a vapor power cycle. The vapor refers to the fact that the working fluid flowing through it is a vapor, a water vapor. Power is produced, and cycle refers to the fact that it's cyclic, it's repeated over and over. So let's go over the four main components of it. First, we have the boiler, where heat is added. This is where we'll focus later. The turbine, where power is produced. The condenser, where heat is removed. And the pump, where the fluid is made available to the boiler again. So let's focus on the boiler. The main thing that all vapor power plants have in common is that heat is added to the boiler in order to turn liquid water into steam. This steam is run through the turbine, which rotates, much like our water wheel, and produces electricity. So the main difference between a lot of these different power cycles is where the energy for the boiler comes from. With things like coal and natural gas, we have combustion with a fuel and an oxygen to create heat. However, this also releases greenhouse gases such as CO2. However, the main difference between nuclear energy is that we do not use combustion. We use what's called fission. So the uranium atom fissions or splits into multiple other products, which causes a chain reaction with other nearby uranium atoms. This produces heat, but does not produce greenhouse gases. So now that we've covered some of the basics, let's go over why nuclear energy is clean and why it deserves your support. So as just mentioned, it is a zero-emission energy source. It does not combust to produce heat and instead fissions, so it doesn't produce greenhouse gases. So because of this, if we switch from coal and oil to nuclear energy, we can drastically reduce our overall amount of greenhouse gas emissions. And it is important to note that in order to mine our fuel, which is uranium, we must actually use tools that use combustion to work, such as different mining and excavation tools. But the overall focus of this is to focus more on the actual combustion inside the boiler to produce heat, or the overall heat addition. And nuclear energy, of course, fissions, while the other ones combust. So let's go over nuclear waste, because that's a really important concept to understand in thermodynamics. So uranium is a very dense element, and because of that, the amount of waste produced is much smaller relative to other forms of energy production. So from 1950 to now, which is a period of 70 years, the overall amount of waste produced by nuclear energy is about 83,000 metric tons. And while that might seem like a lot, it's so dense that if you try to fit that all inside a football field, it will only be 10 yards deep, which is actually a very small amount considering that's been over the last 70 years. Now, another important aspect of the waste is that it can be recycled, and if we recycle it, we can create more power with that. About 95% of the waste can be recycled or reused to provide power to millions of people. Currently, the US only buries it, but with advanced reactor technology, such as that used in France, we can actually reuse some of this waste material, and that's what France currently does. And also, nuclear energy is more efficient. As seen in this infographic, nuclear energy produces more energy per unit area than any other technology source. And in relation to this one, the amount of area required to produce 1,000 megawatts is 360 times less than other available sources. Now lastly, nuclear energy is safe. And so we haven't had very many accidents, so I'm going to go over some of the other ones that happened and see what we can learn from them. Because the second best way to learn is to learn from one's own mistakes, but the best way to learn is to learn from others' mistakes. So that's what we're going to do. One of the most famous ones is Chernobyl. Chernobyl happened because of a flawed reactor design and incompetent reactor operators. They ended up disabling an automatic shutdown system, which would have prevented the reactor from going critical. And so it ended up going critical, there was a steam explosion, and as a result, people got injured or killed. We have better technology and more competent reactor operators now, so this won't happen again. Now, Fukushima, which is a much more recent one, had a flawed wall design where the tsunami produced by an earthquake, was able to go over the walls and damage some of the equipment to protect the reactor from overheating. However, the seismic stability of these reactors were perfectly fine. And so much like airliners, there are accidents that can harm people. However, each incident is meticulously looked over by intelligent people to determine what went wrong and what we can learn from them. The United States Navy has been using nuclear reactors on board some of its ocean-going vessels for over 70 years and they have a completely unblemished record with 0 reactor problems. And so this is because the amount of training that they make people go through is quite a large amount. So it just goes to show that if we train people correctly, we can easily make sure we avoid problems. So now that you know all this, what can you do about it? Well, for starters, we can start by electing people in government who support nuclear energy. The whole point of people in government is to do what the people want, so if we tell them what we want, they should listen. We gotta tell them that it's a zero-emission energy source, it can be reused, and that if we have intelligent people running it, we won't have any problems. We're running out of time to solve the problem of global warming. We need new and innovative ideas to try and fix it. This nuclear energy is one of those ideas, and it will help us climb out of that hole. Thank you.